there, ladies and gentlemen. I realized I always start all my videos, hey guys. I don't know, that's just kind of the way I talk to you guys, isn't it? All right, you're my guys and gals. All right, Cleopatra. So the plot thickens. Julius Caesar he had a friend in Pompey, and then he got too popular, and he was a great general, and all the people were loving him because he was for the little guy, and Pompey and his friends didn't like that. So they gave him the ultimatum about the Rubicon, and Caesar crossed the Rubicon, and therefore that caused a civil war. And so they began fighting each other. Well, Caesar was winning. So Pompey decided to escape to Egypt. Now, we might think of Africa, because, you know, Egypt is in northern Africa, and you might think of Europe and Africa of being really far away. But if you remember on that map that we talked about during the Punic Wars, Italy was just right here. Italy was right here, and then Africa was just right here. Just northern Africa is right here. So that Mediterranean Sea, the Mediterranean Sea that divides Europe from Africa, is not that far. It's not that far. In fact, that was their world. Remember, they didn't know anything about North America and South America. So that was their world, and they thought it was pretty big. So Julius Caesar chased Pompey on into Egypt, and now the king of Egypt, he was quite young. He was like 12 years old, and he was the ruler of Egypt. Back then, he was 12 years old. He had advisors that advised him on how to rule his country, but he as a little boy was ruling this country. So some of his advisors told him, hey, what you need to do is, Pompey has escaped the Romans he's escaping Julius Caesar. You need to kill him and give him as a present to Julius Caesar. And so that's what the king of Egypt did. He had him killed. He said, kill Pompey. Well, Julius Caesar, when he arrived in Egypt, he met the king, and he also met the king's sister, who was Cleopatra. And so the king thought that he was, you know, a real, going to be really befriend him. And so he wanted Caesar's friendship, because he knew that Caesar was a very powerful general and a very important person that he needed to make a friend of. He sure didn't want him as an enemy. Well, Cleopatra knew this too, because the brother and sister were really fighting for power of Egypt. And so Cleopatra decided she would introduce herself to Caesar. So she had the servants to roll her up in a rug. Have you ever seen a rug all rolled up? Looks like a big sausage. Okay, well, they rolled her up inside this rug, and they carried her into Julius Caesar's room and set it down. And Julius Caesar's going, what's that doing? Can you hear Finn drinking? What's that? And all of a sudden, they roll the rug out, and out pops Cleopatra. Oh, yoo-hoo! Oh, yoo-hoo! Oh, Caesar! Cleopatra, she was batting her eyelashes flat, just flirting away with Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar, he was like, whoa, you sure are pretty. And Cleopatra said, oh, well, I just, I'm having all these issues with my brother, and I'm so scared of him. I'm scared that he's going to kill me. Well, she had valid concerns about that because Cleopatra was a very, very smart woman, very intelligent. She spoke several languages. In fact, she spoke the language of the people there in Egypt. They weren't even from Egypt, right? So she learned the language of the people. She was very intelligent. She was a lot older than the king, the 12-year-old brother, and so she was a real threat to his authority and his position as the king. And so they were, Cleopatra was a little afraid that he would have her murdered, which that was definitely a possibility. So, but she was very, very smart girl. So she learned the language of the people, which the king, he didn't know the language of the people. So anyway, she was telling, Caesar about her plans and all that. And Caesar like, you're a cutie. And she's going, oh, yes, well. And so the king, he has Pompey killed. Well, that makes Caesar really, really angry because he and Pompey weren't friends. It wasn't because he cared about being friends with Pompey. The thing that upset him was Pompey was a Roman. He was a Roman. How dare an Egyptian or anybody who's not a Roman to kill a Roman? Why, only a Roman can kill another Roman. That's why Julius Caesar was upset. Okay, remember, the Romans, they thought they came from the gods. Nothing more important than a Roman. It was because he was a Roman, and Romans were everything, okay? So, Caesar just about had enough of the king. Well, the king knew that Cleopatra was batting her eyelashes at Caesar, and they were talking and all. So he had the castle surrounded by his soldiers. Well, that just made Caesar even more mad. So he has his army come in. They do away with everybody. He puts Cleopatra in charge. Now remember, most of the time when Romans conquered lands, what happens? They take over the land. They let the people stay there. But they bring in a Roman to rule as governor of the province. They make it a province and they put a Roman in charge of the province. Caesar didn't do that. They left Egypt alone, and he left Cleopatra to rule as the ruler of Egypt. Okay? That wasn't how Romans did things. Now, the people all loved Caesar. Caesar started doing some things. He was ruling maybe with his heart instead of his brain. And so there was people starting to go, hey, that isn't how we do things. Okay, so he went on a trip with her down the Nile, and she showed him all of Egypt, and he brought her back to Rome and showed her all these things. And the people are going, that's a conquered land. What are you doing? They used to parade the leaders of the lands where they conquered. They'd bring them in chains, and they'd have parades in Rome with them, but they would be chained and humiliated in front of the people to show Rome's better. Julius Caesar didn't do that with Cleopatra. So I wanted to talk about Cleopatra a little bit because she was very brave. She was very brave to come in to confront Julius Caesar. She was very intelligent. She was very creative. She thought of a very clever way to come in and see the king, or to see Caesar without the king knowing. She's very ambitious. She knew she could rule the country. She took control. Okay? Really, she was a very, very strong woman. Okay. I think that's all that we'll get into with Cleopatra. One of the things that I like to debate with my classes, and it was, plead your case, is do you think that Cleopatra could help Caesar more, or do you think Caesar could help Cleopatra more? There's advantages to both sides, disadvantages to both sides. So anyway, it's kind of interesting. We won't be able to do that, but so the love affair of Cleopatra and Julius Caesar begins. Guys, did you have any idea that when we started studying ancient Rome, we would have a love story? Oh, yes, it's quite a love story. Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. Okay, so, and now there's another thing that I wanted to talk to you about. When in Rome, do as the Romans. When in Rome, you might hear that term, when in Rome. It means when you're in Rome, the Romans want you to do it the way they do it. How do they live? How do they worship? How do they... Now, when they would conquer lands, they always let the conquered people, you could do whatever you wanted to, where you lived, as long as you were respectful to the Roman Empire. But if you came to Rome, you did it their way. So that's what it means. Do as the Romans. You know, kind of live as let live, but you come to us, you do it our way. Okay? All right. I think that's all. Somebody said on their answers that you answered that Julius Caesar was the first emperor. He was not he was not an emperor. Julius Caesar was not an emperor. It was still much a republic. They had the Senate and the Assembly, and he was not an emperor. Okay? He was just a very strong general, a very strong senator, a very strong consul. Okay? All right. That's it. Until tomorrow, we'll talk again. I love having history class again. Yay.